Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thank you so much for those who are joining us live and for those who are watching our archive. This is the second in a two-part workshop we've done around not only planning a temporary leave during your career for caregiving responsibilities, but now we're going to get back to work. And today we're going to look at how do you get back to a position you've already held, or how do you find a new job? So depending on how long your leave was, we hope you'll receive insights that will be helpful. So it could have been you took FMLA and now you're going back to the same position, or you actually left your career for a longer period of time and now you're looking for a job. Okay, and Kathy's our other presenter and she's going to present at 25 minutes after I do, and then we're going to take a break and then come back for our final hour. Okay, so here we go. And please feel free to post questions in the chat room, add your insights. It's always helpful for me as a presenter if you share what is helpful and what isn't about the presentation. Okay, so here we go. I thought we'd start by thinking about how do we map our return, our career return. Just a little bit about me. So I started supporting family caregivers in 1990 after a career change. I changed careers. I went from writing to supporting family caregivers, and I wove writing into my support of family caregivers. And then I helped my mom for 7 years, and she died in August of 2021. Then I helped my dad for 19 and a half years, and he died this past July 2nd. So look at that photo. Wouldn't it be awesome if that's what our career path looked like? Where we just open up the doors to this grand staircase, and it's very easy to climb the staircase, and then we get choices, and no matter which choice we pick, A or B, left or right, it actually leads to something better. So there's little drama, there's little chaos. It's just laid out for us. That would be great. And I think that's what we hope. And in truth, it could look a little bit more like that. So when you look at this photo, what strikes you about this path? And you're welcome to unmute or post in the chat room. So for me, what's interesting about this is you could really focus on the up and down, but really what's interesting is the forward movement. So there's no stop signs, there's no stoplights, there's actually no intersections. So it's possible to keep going even as you experience the ups and downs of a career path. Oh my gosh, thank you. It looks like an adventure. Yeah, it does look like an adventure. And if we compare it again, so I love that pivot to it's an adventure, which means that it's exciting. We can have some unusual experiences that can be quite powerful. Doesn't it seem a little better than when I go back to that slide? So it's an adventure, and it's okay that there's zigs and zags. It's okay that it's not a straight path. I also wonder, what do we learn when we're driving this path?
Denise, I'm going to jump in and say we learn to be adaptable.
Yes, I was thinking we learn how to maneuver. So we have to maneuver the curves. We have to be very aware of other traffic, oncoming and behind and in front of us. We have to be careful around what we look at because that vista is quite beautiful. So we have to keep our eye on the road ahead. So you have to be a skilled driver to manage this path. So that's how I would think of our path in our career. We're skilled at managing it. And it's important for us to remember that everybody has a different path, and you become the expert in managing your own career path. So in truth, that's easy, right? It's easy to open up a door and see this staircase and just walk up and make the right choice. But skills come out of this path. So rather than judging what your path has looked like, really think about the adventure of gaining skills, which will benefit you around every turn, angle, zigzag. Okay, so let's think through the current pressures that you might feel. So regardless of whether or not it's returning to work in the same job after a short-term leave or starting a new job, looking for a new job, there's pressure. And I wanted to start us to think about what the pressure could be. And what I was thinking of is certainly it's the financial need. During a caregiving experience, if you took time off, left the workforce in order to focus solely on caring for a family member, you might have significant financial needs now. If you took family medical leave, which meant it was an unpaid leave, there's financial pressures to return to work. I also think we want stability. And that comes in having structure, a schedule, knowing how the day is going to unfold. And so if you are looking for a job or looking to return to the workforce, it can feel like there's too much uncertainty. So we like stability. So that's the pressure, to find that stability, to get the answer to the question of where will I work next? We also want benefits. We want insurance. We want paid time off. We want other benefits that come from working for an organization. And I also think we have goals for our career. We want to move forward. We want to advance. We have goals for where we want to be today, and then next year, and then next year. And I also think we want to be well. And if we are living in the stress of uncertainty, it can be hard to feel like we are well. So having that stability of a job also brings us well-being. I'm wondering what I missed when I was creating this list. What would you add in terms of the pressure you might feel or understanding the pressure someone else might feel as they're returning to the workforce? I just thought of one. I also think we feel the pressure to have an identity and feel a part of a community. And where we work becomes a community. And that identity is, I work at this company and I do this. So we're looking for our role, our identity, and our feeling of belonging. Wondering if there's one more that I might have missed. And certainly when we think about financial needs, it's also saving for our own retirement. So maybe we feel the pressure of catching up and creating retirement savings that we didn't have a chance with that. Yeah, thank you, Pamela. Currently recreating your identity coming out of a caregiving experience. So you had this very clear, firm identity as a family caregiver. And then when your caree dies, that identity changes. And so you're trying to figure out, how do I recreate my identity? So it feels uncertain to not know what the next identity is. And that can be difficult. Okay, so let's think this out loud. So how do we find a job? I'm curious, when you've looked for a job, how have you found it? Feel free to share in the chat room. Then I'm curious, if you've received a promotion, how did you do it? Feel free to share that in the chat room. So we can think about the traditional ways of finding a job. And that is obviously looking online, Indeed. What are the other job sites? I always think of Indeed, but there's more. Career Builder, I'm not sure if that's still as popular, but I think Indeed. So looking online, asking those in your network. We're going to talk more about networking this morning. Asking those in your network if they know of someone who is looking to hire. Certainly we could use LinkedIn. So we're working all the angles when we're trying to find a job. And again, I'd love to hear how you found a job. And then I'm also curious. Yes, so Pamela is sharing that networking has been the best way, being involved in community groups, exactly, building those relationships which turn into opportunities. So how do we receive a promotion? I think sometimes receiving a promotion feels like a political process in many ways, right? You're working with your team, your boss, to really work through, how do I get a promotion? I talked to someone earlier this week who actually is in academia, and she was very focused on her research and not necessarily thinking about her career path. And then her boss said to her, "You've got to get promoted. If you want to remain here at this university, get your tenureship, you've got to be promoted." So then that pivoted her to think through, okay, how do I get this promotion? I have another colleague who recently met with her boss and said, I want to work toward my next career path, my next goal, and said, what do I need to do in order to get promoted to the next level? So she's working with her boss on how does she make that happen? So I think really when we look at how do we find a job and how do we receive a promotion, it's about articulating, communicating with others we know when we're looking for a job, and in the workplace when we're looking to get promoted. We have to be clear about that's what we want, and that helps us set the path. So then we know which road to get on. So let's think about your timeline as it relates to re-entering the workforce. So what's possible? What's realistic? What's the short-term solution? And then what's the long-term goal? When I think about the short-term solution, I think about a colleague, Diane, who was caring for her mom, really trying to keep her job, and had so many crises with her mom that it was difficult for her to not call off work. So she was always calling her manager, giving him plenty of time to say, you know what, I can't make my shift. Well, they ended up firing her. So then she was thinking about what's my next job that I can take that offers flexibility. So she started working for a home care agency in her community. She was able to set her schedule. The flexibility helped her keep her shifts. And then that turned into her career. So she's now a trainer at that home care agency and trains employees and staff. So what was the short-term solution became the career. And the truth is, it was not a career she would have ever pursued. So I think about short-term solutions as being right now with the potential of you never know. So what can be a short-term solution right now that resolves some of the financial pressures, for instance? And then thinking through, this is what I want to do right now. What I really want to do is this, but I'm going to do this right now as I continue on my path to my long-term goal. I have a nephew who graduated in May. He has a job that is not quite what he wants, but it looks good. So he has been debating, do I keep this job? What do I do about not having enough hours and feeling like I'm not using all the skills that I've really acquired? So he's decided, okay, this is my right now job. In the fall, I'll continue this job. And then after the holidays in January, I'll look for another. So that could be also how you look at it. So short term is this year, short term is 2024 with the path for the long-term goal. And then being clear about what your long-term goal is. And again, when you're clear, then you can communicate and then people understand what you want. I often just remember that when people know what you want, the universe hears as well. And sometimes that's the way to open up the opportunities. So you want to be clear about what you want. And it could be clear about the short-term goal and then clear about the long-term goal. And then when you think about what's possible and what's realistic, it's this chance to be gracious with yourself because we have this pressure, right? And sometimes the pressure isn't necessarily related to anything that we just talked about, but it's just the pressure. I've got to get a job. I'm tired of telling people I don't have a job. I just want a job. So thinking through, well, what's possible? And then being gracious with yourself as you're working your way to find the right job. It might not be possible to have your next job on Monday, and that's okay. So what's realistic? It could be that you set a timeline that realistically, it's going to take me a couple months, but I'm committed and I'm going to give myself a couple months. And maybe I'll take some gigs that will keep money flowing in until I find that job that's right for me right now. Okay. So as you think about the right now job, I think oftentimes we judge it and we think, oh, it's below me, or I should be looking for something better. But if it's the right now job that eases some of the pressure, it's a good fit for you. It's a stepping stone. It's not forever. And then you never know how the right now job could lead to the dream job. You never know who you'll meet. You'll never know what experiences or skills that you didn't expect to create and make, you'll actually create and make. So we have a tendency to judge ourselves again, thinking that it's the grand staircase. And if we're not on the grand staircase, we are failing. But again, it's an adventure. So look at the vista, look around, and then decide where I am right now on this path is okay because it eases some of my pressure. So then let's think about the path with your timeline. And I like to break down a timeline of actions based on what can I do today, this week, this month, this quarter. And the other thing I try to remember is that if I am looking for an opportunity, I can reach out to 5 people by 10 a.m. every day. So I learned this in a mastermind group. And one of the suggestions was, if you're looking for speaking gigs, commit to reaching out to 5 individuals by 10 a.m. This advice, though, works for all of us when we're looking to actually achieve something. So reaching out to 5 by 10 a.m. could be reaching out to new connections on social media, sending out emails to your existing connections, sending out cold emails to individuals that you think I want to connect to this person. I want to build a relationship with this person. And it also could be that you just make phone calls to people in your network you haven't connected with, and you just reach out to say, hey, I'm thinking of you, or you send them a text message. So committing to reaching out to 5 people by 10 a.m. can help you create this certainty in your day. So we talked about the pressure of uncertainty. If you are certain that you can do this, it creates this schedule in your day. So reaching out to 5 people by 10 a.m., Monday through Friday. So here's what the timeline can sound like. So by the end of today, what will you achieve? And then actually writing it out. Today, I achieved this. I reached out to 5 people. These are the 5 people. This was my outreach. This was my result. And then at the end of the week, How will you measure your progress? When you first start to do this, it might be difficult to see your progress after the first few weeks. So you might wait maybe 3 weeks, a month before you start actually doing this at the end of a week. So at the end of the week, what was your progress? So an outreach to someone on LinkedIn as part of your 5x10 led to a meeting. So that's progress. An email you sent to a colleague to let them know you're looking for a job led to an introduction. That's progress. So I think it's helpful when you think about your timeline to keep track of the map of what happens because you take action. I think we forget to do that. And it's so important because once you start seeing your progress, you are motivated to continue. We think we first start with motivation. In truth, we make progress, and that leads to motivation. And then you can look at every month, how many connections did you make? And then at the end of the quarter, you can think about what was successful. And success can be however you define it. It doesn't necessarily have to say, I've landed my dream job. It could be, I was successful in how I managed these particular networking events, these one-on-one phone calls, these Zoom meetings. So define success and then track it. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes left, and then we're going to turn it over to Kathy. One thing to keep in mind is our mind sometimes will be our biggest barrier to actually doing anything. So for instance, 5x10, you might say, oh my gosh, no one wants to hear from me. That's a belief that's making your day harder. And then you might say, I need to find a job by Monday morning and it's Friday afternoon. That's a deadline that's impossible to meet. And then you might be on social media and you might think, oh my gosh, everybody has a life that's the grand staircase. I don't see anybody else that has the adventure that I'm on. So that's a comparison that makes you feel worse. So the new belief is, I want to connect and see what others are doing in their career, which is why I want to reach out to 5x10. I'm curious about how others are doing. That's my outreach. The deadline that I can create is based on what progress I'm making. The more progress I make, the better I can set a deadline for when I'll land the job, get the promotion, whatever it might be. And then effective measurement can be, how many 5x10s did you do this week? How many calls did you get scheduled as a result of that? How many networking events did you go to? Because it can feel sometimes a little intimidating to go to networking events. So if you go, that's that's success, and you want to effectively measure that. Okay, so we just want to take a minute. I just love this picture because it's the excitement of someone winning, right? And that's what we want for you. We want you to win. So I'm just going to ask you to take a minute to close your eyes, keep this picture in your head, and then just pay attention to the sound of my voice. So you're relaxed in your chair, you're happy and comfortable where you are, and you are feeling the excitement we hold for you because you have achieved. You are successful. You are in the right job at the right time with the right opportunities. We are excited for you and happy for you, and you can feel it and take it in. So when you have doubts or worries, you can instead receive our excitement and support for your win. You have earned your win because you have committed to your path. You've committed to your actions. You have stayed on course no matter all the zigs and zags, and it has paid off for you. And that's why we are so excited and happy for you, because you have worked hard, you've committed to your actions, and you've created the right opportunity for you right now. Okay, So you can go ahead and open up your eyes. And we're gonna move to Kathy. Kathy's gonna have a 25-minute presentation, and then we're gonna take a 10-minute break, and then we'll conclude. Okay. There you go. And you are muted too, Kathy.
All right, I think we're good. I'm unmuted. There's my presentation. Okay, great. So thank you for being here today. I'm going to talk about working well with your employer when you're returning from a caregiving leave, but what I'm going to talk about is just as applicable if you're starting a new job after your caregiving leave. So just a little bit about me. So I was a part-time caregiver for my mom who had dementia and a respite caregiver for a friend who had motor neuron disease. But I have also just completed 22 years managing human resources in a small nonprofit in Massachusetts. So I have training as a certified caregiving consultant, a grief support specialist, and also MBA. So I bring a lot of different, looking at this from a lot of different angles to this presentation. So the situation I'll be talking about is your caregiving leave is over and it's time to return to work. How will you manage this transition? I think the first thing to start with when you're in this position is to get yourself ready, yourself ready inside, your emotions, everything that you're bringing to the table. And one of the things to think about is that you've just been through a caregiving situation. It's possible that your caree has passed away, or maybe your caree has recovered from whatever the crisis is that you needed to caregive for, or someone else has taken over, or your caree's moved into a facility where you're going to be less on a day-to-day basis. But in any case, it's a change for you. And anytime there's a change generates grief. So you may miss what has been. You may miss your caree if your caree is no longer with you, and you may miss your relationship and role to your caree. And you may be moving from an environment, even though the caregiving environment can be chaotic and hectic and all of that, but you've had to be in charge, back to one in which you may not be. For example, there's many changes in what your identity is as a caregiver versus what your identity is in your working role. And you may not want to go back to work, but it may be a necessity. Denise touched on this a little bit, and one thing to think about too is you may not want to go back to the job you had, or you may be taking a job that's not your ideal job, but it's a step, and that's the important step to take. So just some words on how to cope, which is basically one day at a time and one step at a time. Find somebody to talk to about those changes, whether that's a relative, a friend, a professional. And remember that this change should be changed too. Again, you may be going back to work at a job that's not your ideal job. You can find another job. You can get a promotion. You can do whatever. In all these changes, it's very important to take care of yourself, because basically you've been through a lot, and these transitions are very difficult, and it's really important to look after yourself. It's so easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm back at work, and now I have to do this, and this, and I have to catch up, but don't forget to take care of you. So to prepare to return to work, start preparing well in advance of your return. Think about what are your personal responsibilities that you have to take care of, whether you're, and some of those may still be doing some caregiving for a person, or they may not. And think about your other needs, childcare, transportation, etc. Also look at what your available resources are for support. Do you have a partner? Do you have a family who will help? Are there community resources like friends and neighbors that you might be able to pull into the mix? Can your coworkers support you? And is there any possibility of hired help? Maybe just for a while, it would be helpful to have someone come clean your house once a week or every 2 weeks. Maybe just for a while, it would be helpful to have someone watch your children if you have children, for an hour when you get home from work, just so you can decompress. And maybe just for a while, it's worth it having somebody grocery shop for you, or calling Instacart, or any of those things that could just take some pressure off you as you ease into returning back to work. Now, if you're returning to a job where you've taken caregiving leave, it's important that you know your rights under FMLA, which is that when you return to work, you have to be offered an equivalent position, which is one that's virtually identical to your former position in terms of pay, benefits, working conditions. It must also involve the same or substantially similar duties and responsibilities, and must require substantially equivalent skill, effort, responsibility, and authority. I put a link in here to a Department of Labor page that has a lot more information about that. But I know a lot of people are afraid of taking leave, or hesitant to take leave, worried about what happens when you return to leave. Will I get my job back? But FMLA does state that you need to have at least an equivalent position, if not your former position. There are state laws about caregiving leave in some states, and they may apply to you. And your employer's policies may also give you additional rights. So it's important to check into all of those as well. So the first thing you want to do if you're returning to a position is notify your employer. Let your employer know that you intend to return to work after your caregiving leave. Give them as much notice as possible, especially if there's someone who's been in your position. Say, I work at a school, and so there's substitute teachers. We may have to terminate the substitute teacher when you're coming back, so it's good to have as much notice as possible. Coordinate with your employer to determine your return date and your work schedule. Provide any required documentation if needed. And consider any adjustments you might want to ask for initially. For example, do you want to start coming back? Say you're a full-time employee. Do you want to start coming back part-time and then add a few hours each week? Do you want to think about flexible hours where maybe you can work at home some days? Or, even a job share where maybe the person who's been in your position, if there is one, could work part-time. You could work part-time for a while. Something like that. Think about what you may need and what will work for you in terms of easing back in. And also be upfront with your employer about whether you think you'll need another block of leave if you're eligible for one, or reduced hours or intermittent leave in the future. I know FMLA and I think states have a limit on how much you can take per year. If you're returning to your employer, maybe you've used that up, maybe you haven't used that up, but if there is some available to you, let your employer know up front if you think you're going to need it in the future. We have had situations here where people didn't let us know, and then all of a sudden said, oh, by the way, I have this doctor's appointment that I have to take someone to every week. It would have been nice to know that ahead of time. So, just a scenario, if you've had someone in your position who's been filling your position while you're gone, if you're going to need to take intermittent leave, that's something someone the employer would want to call on. So it's good if they can plan ahead as well. So more on easing back in. Determine if you'll be returning to the same job or an equivalent job, and discuss what your responsibilities will be. Even if you're returning to the same job, things may have changed while you were gone. Could have been a shifting around of job descriptions or a complete reorganization. Find out what your responsibilities will be, so you know before you step in the door. Ask if there are any changes in company policies or procedures. Often people find that while they're on leave, someone's put in a whole new technology system that has to be learned, or suddenly we don't do it that way anymore. We don't do this that way anymore. So if you can get up to speed on those policies or procedures before you step in the door, it'll be so much better for you. Find out if there's any new skills or technologies you need to learn to be up to speed upon your return, and how that will happen. Will they train you in the new skills? Will they allow you to go for training to acquire new skills? And just a side note that is a requirement of FMLA as well, that if there's a new skill required by your position, that they have to allow you to take training on that new skill. Determine if your work role and duties will be the same. Again, going back to the reorganization, has anything changed? Review any projects, deadlines, and outstanding assignments. And that could be outstanding assignments that you had before you left, or perhaps you're coming back in the middle of some big project and taking it over. So find out what that's about, find out what's due when. And also reach out to your colleagues to reestablish relationships. I'm sure your colleagues will be happy to have you back and support you in any way they can to make sure that you transition back in. And, often they're the people who keep you up to speed. This reminded me that when we've had people on leave before, one of the things that we've done is just keep a notebook of like every little thing that happened while the person was gone. Then they came back, we went, here's the story, and they could read the story and catch up. And, if even when you let your colleagues know that you're about to come back, if you could say, just write down anything you think of, your colleagues may think of things that your supervisor might not, or HR might not. So that's kind of good to have the lay of the land.
Kathy, could I ask you a quick question as we're talking about really gathering good information for your return?
Yes.
I know that with FMLA, and please help me best understand this, you cannot work when you're on FMLA. So how does this communication with your employer to understand what's going on at work fall under that if you're doing it before you return to work?
I think that once you've indicated that you're going to return to work, that you can then ask. I believe the employee can ask for information. The employer can't ask the employee for information.
Okay.
While they're on leave.
Okay.
Because that's violating the leave, the person's leave. Right.
Yes.
The employee can say, I know I'm coming back. Tell me what I need to know.
Okay.
It's a good question, Denise. So at the core of all this is communication. If you have any concerns about changes in the organization or your responsibilities, for example, they say, oh, by the way, you're not reporting to Joan anymore, you're reporting to Susie now or something. Discuss them openly and constructively with your employer. You can ask why that happened, like what the expectations are. And be open about any ongoing caregiving responsibilities and how they'll affect your work. For example, if your caree has moved to a facility, or someone else in the family has stepped up and is now doing caregiving, but you may be called upon, let them know again that might happen. And discuss any concerns you have or adjustments you may need in the workplace. If you say, I'm going to need a little time to get up to speed, they should respect that. Seek support at work. Talk to your colleagues about your situation and any potential challenges. You can say, oh my gosh, I really don't understand this computer system. Can you help me? This is once you're back, of course, once you're back at work. Talk to your supervisor and HR to give and receive feedback. You could set up regular meetings with your supervisor and just say, can we meet once a week? Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know how you think, I could be doing better at getting back into the flow of things. Determine if there's an employee assistance program or other programs that might be available to you at work. And start a support group if there isn't one, because I'm willing to bet, even in a small school like ours with 35 employees, there's more than one person at a time who's either returning from leave or in a caregiving experience or has ended a caregiving experience. There's always room to start a support group. If there isn't one already, just even 2 or 3 people sitting around talking about it can make a difference in terms of you feeling supported. Another important thing is to create contingency plans. So especially if you're still in a caregiving situation, or even if you're not, because we all know that things happen all the time, and you've just returned from a leave and you want to make sure, that anything that comes up is going to be handled to the best of your ability. So have a contingency plan for unexpected situations. What will the plan be at home? What will the plan be at work? So let's say that, for example, your caree is now being cared for by another family member. Suddenly that other family member gets ill. Therefore, things are falling back on your shoulders again. What will the plan be at home? How is that going to work? Are you going to take another leave? Can you take another leave? What's going to happen with that? If you can't, if you have children, who's going to watch the children? Who could possibly take care of your caree? How will all that come together? The same thing needs to happen at work. If you have to be out again, who's going to cover for you? Can your colleagues sort of take over, your major projects? Can you continue to work at home? Can you work a few days? Like, what is the plan? And I'll just mention that Denise has an excellent workshop called Release a Worry with a Family Emergency Plan, which talks about all the things you need to keep in mind in a family emergency. And if you haven't done one yet, this link will take you to the next workshop that you can sign up for. And really, every person on earth should have a family emergency plan, I'll just say. So another thing to keep in mind, the major thing to keep in mind, is that you need to take care of yourself in this process. A lot of people go, okay, now I'm caregiving, especially if you've had loss, and maybe you have or maybe you haven't given yourself time to grieve that loss, time to adjust to that loss, depending on your caregiving leave. You may still be grieving. You're going to be grieving the change in some form anyway, because you've gone from this very intense experience of caregiving back to what may be a very intense experience at work as well. So recognize that this transition will take time. You're not going to go from, Friday, I'm at home, to Monday, I'm 100% at work. You're going to, take a while to get back to that. Given that I work in a school, I'll just share this. Our teachers come back every September. It's not till October that everybody's 100%. And that's really just coming back from being disconnected for a couple of months, with varying experiences there. Some may be leisure, some maybe not, but it really takes at least a month before people are really like firing on all cylinders and like really like at work. So given what your caregiving experience may have been, what your grieving experience may have been, it could take longer. Be gentle with yourself. Take one step at a time. Everything doesn't have to be perfect on the first day back. It's going to take some time. And if you need to communicate that to your supervisors, to your colleagues, then that's what you need to do, to set boundaries and make sure that you're not getting overwhelmed. What tends to happen when people come back to work after a leave is either people think they're not ready to handle anything. People think they're ready to handle everything. Your very presence in the building can mean to some people that you're 100%, you're ready to go. You're exactly where you were when you left, which may not be true in terms of just capability and energy and all that. And they can just load it all on you. May or may not be true. Probably isn't true. So just let people know it's going to take you a while to ease in. Make sure you take breaks, eat lunch, and rest. The number one thing, as we probably all know, that people do when they're at work and they're stressed is they skip their breaks and they skip their lunch and they work right through and they go home exhausted. Given the stress that you're under with the transition, you can't afford to do that. You've got to take the breaks. You've got to eat the lunch, and you have to go home and make sure that you sleep at night, because that's really the only way that it's going to keep going. If you can, find one activity that enhances your physical and mental well-being. Could be yoga, could be walking every day, could be going to the gym, could be meditation, could be any kind of simple thing Could just be 15, 20 minutes a day, but make sure you do at least one thing every day for you. And those things will help you to get stronger and also just give you a break from everything. And ask your friends to listen, because you need them. You need your friends, you need your colleagues. You know, it might be hard at work to get your colleagues to hear your whole story, but try to find friends or a professional or a support group where you can really tell your story as it unfolds, so that you have somebody there to hear you and to support you. I've added some resources here. There's links to FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act information. I'm in Massachusetts. So in Massachusetts, we have paid family medical leave also, which works with FMLA. So I've included the Massachusetts information, but whatever state you're in, the next link will take you to a link for whatever state you're in, what the paid leave information is there, because some may have different terms in terms of coming back, what you can do, how much you can take, etc. I'll just warn you that the article on states with paid leave was pulled a month ago, and it's changing all the time. So please be sure that you get current information when you're looking for your leave or looking to return from your leave. Your HR department should be able to provide you with current information. It's their obligation to do that. Or your state Department of Labor could be able to do that. In Massachusetts, we have a separate Department of Caregiving Leave, I think it's called, and they have information. But just make sure that you know, especially if there's any question with your employer, is giving you any kind of pushback, make sure you know what your rights are. And I think I'll just give you my information. I think you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint, but there's my email, phone number where you can reach me. If you need any other information, just let me know. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything? I see there are comments in the chat.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead, Denise.
How do you feel about interviewing candidates who express honesty about personal caregiving situations? So I'm interviewing for a job to be a teacher at your school. During the interview process, I say, I just want to let you know up front, I'm caring for my mom. She has chronic illnesses, and I think it's important for you to know that.
So, the interesting thing is that basically every employee has a story, right? Every employee has something, and you just really have to, I hope, decide on the merit of the individual and not so much as what might come down the pike, because you don't know. I mean, to be honest, we had an employee a year and a half ago who sustained an injury on the weekend that has made them permanently disabled. And we would never have anticipated that, of course. So you just don't know. So I think it's really great if people can be open with you during the interview stage, or, some people aren't comfortable during the interview stage. I don't think the employer can't ask, of course, but, it's fine if the employee decides to divulge. But for us, it would just be, okay, so we really want you to work here. Let's figure out what we can do, to make that work in case that happens. And I hope other employers would respond that way too. But I think it's really important to be open as soon as you can about that. So that people know.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I had this conversation many years ago with family caregivers, and they all decided that it was best to disclose during the interview because they learned about the employer by disclosing.
Right.
And that helped them find the right fit. And what was interesting is what they said is it didn't eliminate opportunities. It just cleared the way for the right opportunity. And you don't have to get into specifics. And I think how I said it earlier might be appropriate. Just want to give you a heads up. I do care for my mom. She has chronic illnesses. And I think it's important that you know that.
Right.
You don't have to give all the details, but just that heads up, and then see how they respond. I think one family caregiver asked, actually, what kind of benefits do you have that can help individuals who are caring for a family member? So it wasn't a disclosure that I'm in a caregiving situation. It was a question around what benefits and support do you have available when someone is caring for a family member? That actually might be helpful to know, because that again will help you align with the right employer.
That's the perfect question. Yeah. You know, what can you do to support me?
Yeah,
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
And I think that is a good point, you know, that you will come up against employers who will basically be taken aback by that question, and then you know that's not the right fit for you.
Because you're gonna be, the employer's gonna be taking it back all the time.
Time. And why fight that uphill battle? You know, you need an environment
Right,
that's supportive to you in
right.
your situation.
It might make the job search longer. And again, you might have to find a short-term fix to alleviate the financial pressure as you look for the right job. However, I think the certainty of knowing that you've aligned with the right employer is important.
Right.
And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are worried about sharing with your manager that something has happened at home, because that just creates so much stress for you if you feel like you have to hide it and keep it a secret.
Right. Let me also just say that it's been very interesting to me because we've had a number of people go on leave in the past year here, and they've all been hesitant to say anything to the person who's head of the organization. They've come to me in HR and said, I might need to take leave, but I don't know if I want to say anything yet. And I always say, the minute you tell them, you are protected by law. So you need to like just make that. We can't really do much for you, but once it's out there, once you send an email that say I'm going to need to take leave, then everything else can be put into place. But I'm really, I feel badly that people get so like not want to share it. You know, like you need to share it. That's who you are.
And I think it's important to understand what your rights are as an employee,
Yeah.
what the benefits are that are available to you, what your state benefits are, if you have state-specific paid leave benefits, and then how FMLA works. And we really covered that last month in our workshop because it's important, you know, it really can guide effective conversations and help you with the confidence around, it's important for me to say something.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, this was great, Kathy. Thank you so much. We're going to take an 8-minute break. So I will see you back here in 8 minutes.